Good evening, everyone. Hope all of you are doing well. My name is Aishwarya Martin, and I welcome all of you to the fourth lecture of the Pandemic Lecture Series. This series is being conducted by the Center of Asia Pacific Business Research, Economics and Innovation in collaboration with Startup JGU at Jindal Global Business School. The center aims to serve the Asia Pacific businesses and academic communities by bringing together researchers and industry leaders to engage in dialogues and conduct high-quality research on current and emerging issues. This series has a different expert every week, discussing the impact of COVID-19 on businesses, economies, environment, and international relations. Today with us, we have Professor Ronita Choudhuri. She is an Assistant Professor of Practice at Jindal Global Business School. She is leading Startup JGU, a Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at the university, and blended learning entrepreneurship programs. She worked for 6 years for the investment management firm Mainstay Investments as a senior sales associate. After completing her master's, she worked as a project manager for the United Nations Democracy Fund in New York. She's also the co-founder of Armadillo Digital, a venture studio based in New Delhi that builds brands in edtech, ethical commerce, and digital media. Today, she'll be highlighting about the factors that create an entrepreneurial mindset, which is very relevant in the times of uncertainty like the one we are facing now. We are all living with the struggles that an entrepreneur faces, but entrepreneurs hypothesize the future, experiments, and take calculated actions within a space of uncertainty. While everyone may not start their own business, there is plenty to learn from having an entrepreneurial mindset. Before we begin, here are some basic rules. All participants, except the speaker and the moderator, are requested to switch off their webcam and microphone. We encourage you to participate. You can actively participate by sending questions in chats, and I will convey selected questions to the speaker. The question and answer session will be towards the end of this webinar. Please use the adjacent chat box to post your questions. Now, without further ado, and I boring you, I welcome Professor Ronita ma'am to commence the lecture.
Wow, great. What an introduction. Thank you so much, Aishwarya. And I will try to follow your rules as well. There's many. Interesting, lots of learning, and I'm going to do this talk. It was actually on the tails of another lecture I had done previously on entrepreneurship. As Aishwarya mentioned, I am leading the entrepreneurship programs at JGBS under the umbrella of Startup JGU, which is a cross-university center. And you know, when we're talking about entrepreneurship, I think, or you know, as I move into the 8 factors on having an entrepreneurial mind, I thought it would be best to first, you know, lay out some definitions, identify exactly what we're talking about, and then move from there. Again, I'm very happy to answer any questions. I'm going to talk for a bit, and you know, please put your questions in the chat box, and I'd be happy to answer them. If we don't get to them all, please feel free to reach out to me by email. You know, if we talk about entrepreneurship, right? Many people, entrepreneurs themselves, will say that it can't be taught. It is something you live and you experience. It can't be defined. There's no rule book. There's no designated path. And to be honest, I mean, there's certain elements of that I agree with. And that's what makes entrepreneurship quite exciting, is that there is a lot of gray area. There is room for creativity, and there isn't one set formula. I know a lot of my students do try to ask, what is the formula for becoming an entrepreneur? And I have to ask them back, you know, how do you define entrepreneurship? For many of them, it might just end up being, you know, fame and money. But for a lot of people, you know, or I should say, entrepreneurs, they come in different forms. And again, this is my perspective. Everyone has different perspectives on this. And there are different paths that lead to being an entrepreneur. It's a diverse population. And the purpose of this talk, again, I should say, is not to say, again, that there's one strict way about going about being an entrepreneur. And this conversation is to be a productive conversation. Feel free to challenge things I say, but this should be a productive conversation and a sharing of knowledge. And in that tone, how I define entrepreneurship is really looking at founders, right? So people that start organizations, start ideas, start ventures. And that doesn't always have to be someone that is in a for-profit business that has an app, that lives in Silicon Valley or Bangalore or you know, Lagos. It is someone that starts an idea, that has an idea in their head and then brings that to life. So that can actually encompass many things then. That can encompass an NGO, a social enterprise, a corporation that's in view, and the startup as we know. So I'm going to use the term entrepreneurship in a more holistic and widely defined criteria, where it's mostly focused on this idea of founders. And how do you bring an idea to life? And that's very, very challenging. You know, sometimes people do get hooked on it. It can be addicting to constantly start new things. But in other times, you know, people try out being an entrepreneur and then, you know, they realize that, you know, maybe it's not for them. As I sort of mentioned, you know, COVID, I feel, you know, when all of this started happening and there was a lot of volatility and we weren't sure what was going to happen. For me personally, it brought back memories of when I first started my business, where you're not in control of the market, you're not in control of what's happening, and it's just a matter of learning, understanding, learning, and adapting. And that's what I see entrepreneurship is, and that's what successful entrepreneurs do. No matter what field they're in, no matter what organization or idea that they're bringing to life. One other, I think, area that is often confusing for people is entrepreneurship versus intrapreneurship. And I don't want to glorify entrepreneurs in the sense of, you know, Silicon Valley tech. While there is a lot of great solutions coming out of that area of the world, that's a very specific context. I think there is a lot to be given to intrapreneurs, who are people that think of new ideas and new creations even within a corporate structure. So intrapreneurship can be, an example can be the different products that are coming out of Apple itself. You know, those products that we have now, they're ideas in someone's head, and, you know, Apple is able to provide them resources and absorb the risk of carrying out those projects. Many of them don't work as well. So there is intrapreneurship. There's entrepreneurship, where, you know, you are bringing your idea to life, you're taking on the risk, you're taking on the reward. And entrepreneurship is also very important when we talk about the Indian context as well as family businesses. There is a huge scope of innovation and entrepreneurship that can happen in a lot of Indian family businesses, especially on the medium size. And I'm excited to work with, you know, the JGBS students when I do, to see how we can innovate within their family's legacy businesses. You know, if we're talking about entrepreneurship, including entrepreneurship, whatever it might be, I mean, the reason that we can even talk about that is because there is the barrier to entry to create a business, to launch an idea, has decreased tremendously. And that is due to the internet, honestly. So if we look at doing the legal paperwork, having access to resources, and I don't even just mean money, I mean design, creative, collateral, supply chain, delivery, all of that those barriers of entry have been tremendously reduced thanks to the internet. And more people can start their own brands, start their own companies, and put these links together, and especially in India, also formalize a lot of things that were happening informally. So that is the lay of the land as we get into this talk. So when we're talking about an entrepreneurial mindset, What we're talking about is the skills that often entrepreneurs have to learn the hard way, and how those skills can be very, very helpful when we're in a volatile situation, like how we find ourselves right now. Coronavirus is still raging on. There's hints of a second lockdown perhaps, but what I know for sure is that we haven't solved anything yet. So what are the tools and the skills that entrepreneurs that live in a volatile environment use and put into action to succeed? I've seen this myself. These are all, you know, characteristics I've kind of had to learn the hard way and remind myself to have. And it's also characteristics I've seen in other people in my network and the colleagues when I ask them, you know, how do you guys keep going in a volatile environment? So what I'm gonna do is bring up a presentation. There's gonna be the 8 factors of an entrepreneurial mindset listed on there, and I'll go through them one by one. So bear with me as I share my screen. Okay, here we go. So an entrepreneurial mindset. So these are the first 4 I'm gonna highlight. Number 1 is commercial awareness. 2nd is creative thinking. 3rd is adaptability. And the 4th is problem solving. I know we've always heard these terms and they always sound very nice, but what do they actually mean? Let's start with commercial awareness now. So when we're talking about commercial awareness, I'm not only speaking about what sells, right? What I'm talking about is understanding what your customer values, right? So what is the need? And there's the need now and there's a future need. So these are the 3 areas I'm going to discuss. So when we're talking about what customers value, you first have to define what the customer is. So for instance, if you're having an NGO, you're going to have 2 sets of customers, perhaps your donors and the community that you're serving. Now, the community that you're serving, you know, they're going to value the solutions you provide, whether it's education, it's employment, skill development, talent, training, all of that, that's going to be of value, right? Food provisions. If you're looking at your donors, what do they actually value? And, you know, it will be, of course, effectiveness of your organization and how the work's being done and how the money is being distributed. But what they're also going to significantly value is perhaps the photos that you can provide, right? Perhaps the more stories and the photos that you can provide your donors, the more likely they're going to continue to donate to your NGO. Now, that might not be something that everyone's always putting priority towards, but is an awareness to have to drive more donations, to drive more involvement, because that is what's important to the donors. Maybe they do want to show photos of the help that they're being able to provide, right? Maybe they want to share those stories. So again, commercial awareness is understanding the customer and what is important to them. I have an entrepreneur I'm working with at the moment, and you know, he's trying to launch a skincare company. And you know, when we're talking through his ideas, he's saying that, you know, the customer wants better skin. Absolutely. Totally fine. But what is it actually that the customer wants? What they want is to look beautiful, right? To look gorgeous, to look beautiful, to look attractive. That's what they actually want. The tool they're using to get that is a skincare product. So are you able to digest the larger picture that's going on and what the customer is actually valuing? And if you're looking at that maybe it's actually the emotional beauty that the customer is aiming for rather than just your specific product, you can start thinking bigger and have more diverse solutions. So it's not just about pushing your product, that my product is, you know, it has these natural ingredients and it's so good. It has all these good things that will make you look better, because that is the customer's end. Now, the need now versus future need. this is actually an interesting conversation if you look at what a lot of people are saying between innovation and startups in the US and what's coming out of India and the developing part, quote unquote developing parts of the world, right? Right now, a lot of the great startups, if you're going to look at that are coming out of India, are solving wonderful needs that we're dealing with right now, right? Whether it's access to quick money transfers, whether it's access to education. These are now needs, and they're formalizing, providing more transparency, and making access to these, apparent needs, and immediate needs, I should say. They're solving the problems for now. A lot of other startups that are being very innovative, what they're also looking at is what is the need in the future, right? And how do you solve that need now? If you see that the puck is going a certain direction, can you bring that solution that might come 2 years from now? Can you bring it into our present and solve that now? Again, this is all centered around the fact that we're looking at what does the customer want, and the customer defined in a larger term, right? In a more holistic term. And, entrepreneurs, the best ones are always looking at this. What do the customers want? What do they value? And then they're able to adapt their organization to that, to what the larger solution is. Something that's been key to me in my journey is identifying what is the larger solution that I want to solve or provide for, right? And if you look at the larger picture, for instance, if we go back to this example of the skincare company, if you understand that the customer wants beauty solutions, they want to feel more beautiful, they want to be more attractive, then you'll be more willing to adapt your products to give your customers what they want, right? So you're not just pigeonholed and just being like, no, I need to sell my, face cream. You're going to be a lot more open to other solutions that maybe it's, makeup, or maybe it's face wash, whatever it might be. This brings me into my second thought, which is creative thinking. Often you'll find that there's a lot of, how should I word that? I'll word this differently. So you'll see that a lot of time founders of companies often come from very diverse backgrounds educationally or academically. They might start a tech company, but maybe they have a history major, or, they had a psych background and now they're starting, CRM companies. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that if you're not from a very specific stream in that sense, you can think differently, right? You can question, why do things have to be a certain way, right? Why do we have to get our food a certain way? Why do we have to get our education a certain way? And out of that comes solutions. Out of that comes innovative thinking. So wherever you are in the world, or whatever your sector is, I would always suggest to constantly question, why do things have to be this way? Why can't things be different? And out of that comes creative thinking. It's not just talking about out-of-the-box solutions, it's also looking at what exists and identifying how it can be changed and how it can be improved. Adaptability, number 3, I think COVID has increased all of our adaptability. Whether that's personal or professional, it's been forced upon all of us. And that's a healthy thing. I think change is good. Having different cycles of iteration. If you come out with a product, normally the first go around is not going to be the greatest, right? And you don't give up in the first go around, right? You try it out, you have a minimal viable product, you try it out and you get better. I mean, if you're stuck to the first product or the first kind, your 1.0 version of your product, that means you're not listening. You're not listening to the feedback you're getting, you're not listening to your customers. And there is something to that, right? You need to be adaptable. And, this can also go for students, right? I think our students have done a fantastic job being adaptable to online courses. And as you can see, we all do benefit if you're able to adapt. if you're able to move within different surroundings. And this can also be a trait for your teams, right? Can you adapt to different learning styles that your team has? Can you adapt to different, different ways to relate to your team? You're gonna have, if you have a team, you're gonna have people from hopefully a diverse set of backgrounds, and you're gonna need to be able to meet, talk to them, relate to them, and create a comfortable environment. And if you're able to adapt in the ways that you explain things, in the way that you, in different ways that you lead, your team is only gonna get better, you're only gonna get better. Problem solving. Again, these may seem very basic, but it's in practice. Those of you that have been around know that it's much harder to do in practice, in the real world, and when you're starting your business or not. Sometimes it's very easy to identify problems. Probably the easiest thing is to identify what is wrong, right? Very easy to flag them, raise your hand and say, this is a problem, that's a problem. But finding a solution is hard, is very, very hard. And that's why problem solving is held as a wonderful skill. Can you do the hard work? Identify the problem enough, but can you provide a solution? And I'd say for all the students that are on here, when you guys go out in, it's not something that you can just read and do. It is something that's built, and it's built by taking risks. Okay. And so this was an example of problem solving. I got muted accidentally. But can you find the solution? Can you answer the questions? Again, for a lot of the students that will be going out in the real world, your bosses are going to be presenting problems. Your managers will be identifying the problems, and you can really set yourself apart if you're able to find a solution for them or even propose it. And sometimes that can be risky and they can be nervous to do so. But I think as long as you're helping to get to a solution, that's what really matters. And be brave, put yourself on the line, but as long as you're working towards not creating more problems, but finding a solution. Okay. Now the last four, a little bit more nuanced, a little bit more difficult. Influencing. So I'm not sure how many of you have read Daniel Pink's book, To Sell is Human. It's one book I read many, many years ago, and it's stuck with me ever since. We have an idea of salespeople as people that push product, make you buy things you don't want to buy. But in actuality, we're selling things all the time ourselves, right? So whether it's I'm trying to, influence my students to hand in their assignments on time, or I'm trying to, tell my partner that, hey, let's watch this TV show instead. We're always selling and we're always influencing. It might not be in the mode of just products, it's just something that we all do. And I think it's something that we can all improve on. Because influencing, or sales, I should say, shouldn't be just about giving people things that they don't want. It goes against the whole idea of it. The idea of influencing and sales in the modern context is related to the idea of problem solving. Are you able to solve a problem for your clients? Are you able to solve a problem for your customers, for your donors, for your teachers, for your managers? And are you able to have the correct arguments, the right points, to have them see your way? So it's not about, just tackling and battering people to see your way or to understand why you have your viewpoint. It's about having a solid argument and influencing others to see your side. And on the flip side, of course, making sure that, you're willing to adapt and know when you're wrong and admit that. But influencing is going to be very key. And again, I'm not talking about like Instagram influencers and their photos and what they're pushing. I'm saying as a personal development skill, to be able to influence and have a solid argument for your point of view and your opinion will go very far in no matter what context that you have. That of course does come with the responsibility of having a solid argument that is based on facts, not just on what you maybe emotionally want, but what is actually better for the company, the organization, or yourself. Leadership. Now, leadership, we have had numerous examples around the world given COVID about what leadership looks like. And it's very many ways to lead when things are all right, when things are going well, the context is going well, the market's going well, people are healthy. But what do you do when things are hard? And that's when it really, really comes out. And I've made some mistakes myself in this. Everyone's a work in progress, where when things have gotten hard, it's been difficult to make the right decisions and see clearly. But that is the role of a leader. So whether you're leading your community group, your student council, your own startup, what do you do? How do you behave when things get hard? And you know, it is tied back with our number one, the ability to identify what the right problem is, what is making things so difficult, and then what do you do? How do you react emotionally, but also with your actions and your words, right? So leadership is going to be key, and it's defined in many ways, and there's no correct way of being a leader. You know, I think when I was first entering the workplace, leadership to me seemed like a very masculine, or being a leader seemed like a very masculine undertaking, right? You had to wear the suits, you had to be very serious all the time, speak in a deep voice. I mean, that was what leadership was symbolized when I was first out of college, you know, many years ago. But of course, leadership has now changed, right? And thankfully, leadership is becoming more diverse and is allowing for lots of different voices, opinions. And I would suggest to all the students as well that, you know, find your own leadership voice. It doesn't have to be exactly like everything you see around you. You know, speak your truth, have your own voice, have your own way of doing, of being a leader, but be that leader. And that leadership comes from making the hard decisions, staying focused on a vision, identifying tricky, why are you doing the things that you're doing? What is it that's driving you? For entrepreneurs, often, you know, of course there are those that want fame, that want money, and, you know, that is what drives a person. Don't get me wrong, that's just reality of it. But sometimes it is for more than that, right? It's to change how the world approaches food. It's to change how the world approaches music, change how the world does business. And it's very important for all of us, no matter what you're doing, to identify what is driving you and being realistic with yourself on that. Have a reality check. What is driving what you're doing? Is it because of what people are saying around you? Is it because you know, you've only seen certain people do certain things and then you're saying, I want to do that too? Is it what the community is telling you to do? Right? That by other things, again, that might be easy or fun, or, you know, might take things a little slowly. You know, have those reasons to get up in the morning and do the hard work and stay at your computer those long hours and to continue to work. One as you can see, I've put here the role of autonomy, mastery, and purpose. I've done a tremendous amount of reading on, what makes people driven, and where do people get that inherent motivation from? Before, of course, if we look at the history of people, it was often safety and security and food and family and all those kind of things. But as we move into the future, our inherent motivations to work or to start companies, can be narrowed down around these three areas of autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And they all do have to exist together, I think, for the future workplace that we're going to be working with very soon. And so when we talk about autonomy, we mean that it's micromanaging is over, right? And that's something that's also brought about by the internet, because with the tremendous amount of information on the internet, often those who are junior to us, who have just started fresh, they have a lot of information, and just telling them what to do, how to do it, isn't going to work. We've seen it, in plenty of studies recently with the, graduates who are entering into the workforce. They want roles and they want work where they have autonomy, where, the problem is presented and they have to look at how to solve it themselves. And we should allow our young people, especially, that room to do so, right? To have that autonomy, to have creative thinking, to be able to adapt and to solve problems. Mastery is, it's more of an emotional trait here. And it's mastery to not only be very good at something and to excel and to be an expert, but also for the emotional self to feel satisfied, right? When you have mastery over an art or over a piece of music, or if you score well on a test, we all know what that feels like and what a great feeling that is. And in a world of constant distractions and so many things to do, I think we've kind of lost focus on the benefits of mastery. And I do foresee that coming back. Lastly, for what keeps people inherently motivated. So, an ability to take responsibility over the solutions, or the problems and solutions, the ability to be an expert in a domain. And the lastly is purpose. What is the larger problem that we're all trying to solve? What is the larger problem that's important to you that you're trying to solve? In my own life, I've been on a journey of trying to understand that. What is the larger purpose for the work that I do and the things that I want to be a part of? For me, it's equality and access at its core, are the two themes that I've come down to, where I want to provide, number one, a more equal standing for people that don't have access to information, to new ways of thinking, right? I work with a NGO here in Delhi quite closely, and that is constantly a part of what I do, is that can I provide them not things or, more formal English words to use. Can I provide them access to information that they never would have had otherwise? Because I know on their own, with that sort of information, they can flourish and they can think creatively. So now, if we go back to drive, that is my inherent motivation with all of the work I do, including with JGBS. It is at the core that can I provide access and an equal footing to all the students that come into Startup JGU, that come into my classes, and provide them the knowledge for them to follow their own paths. Lastly, almost done, is resilience. So we're all learning that again the hard way through COVID, right? And it's really about, are you still standing? Can you take the punches? Can you take volatility? And can you just continue to stand? Sometimes it's not even about, excelling, but can you keep yourself upright? And this is incredibly true for startup ventures, companies right now. Often we see in the news very, very high valuation companies that are getting all these kind of funding. and they're spending like crazy, but hard times come and they don't have the cash that they need actually to pay their employees, to pay their supply chain, to continue with marketing. And that's because they haven't built up this need for resilience. And, you know, as we've seen, anything can happen at any time. We can often be very, very surprised about the drastic, you know, market moves, health moves, everything like this. And so can you be prepared for it? You know, Alex Lazaro, who has this fantastic new book out talking about entrepreneurship globally, he has this wonderful saying about a unicorn and a camel, where, you know, we talk about, you know, the billion unicorn in India here, in the US, everywhere. We're always talking about the unicorn, which is actually a mythological creature, right? Elusive, didn't ever really exist. What Alex Lazaro talks about is something completely else. It's the camel. And often we overlook the camel, but what the camel is able to do is actually survive in very, very harsh climates. Whether it's incredibly hot, whether there's no water, the camel is able to survive, it's able to run, it's able to sprint. And when it does get some water, it drinks it up, it holds it tight, and then it continues again. So especially in places like India, Nigeria, areas of South America, where there are these amazing startup cultures, I think we should put more emphasis on resiliency. You know, can they be more like camels, where they can, you know, weather volatility, you know, volatile talent pools even? Are they built that way? Can you build your company that way to not only create the infrastructure that you need, but then also to go the long distance? You know, it's not about just having a company for a year or 2 years. It's having a company for the long term and solving problems for the long term. And, you know, it's also personal resiliency. Can you get out of bed when, you know, investor says no? When customers pass on your first idea, can you get out and can you continue on with the vision that you have in your head? And that again can go for social enterprises, it can go for students, it can go for PhD students, it can go for startup founders, or, you know, anyone in the workplace. Resiliency is difficult to learn. There's no guidebook, but often just keeping at, having some discipline, and working and moving forward day after day and doing the hard slog, it actually does build up that resilient skill within you. So these are my 8 factors of having an entrepreneurial mindset. So no matter where you go, what you do, what sector you're in, you know, always remember that, or always make sure you identify, you know, what do your customers value? Can you question the current systems that you're in? Can you adapt, right? Are you willing to adapt your models and change for what's coming? Can you problem solve? And this is really, you know, this is especially key once you're over the first year or 2 of a company or an organization, right? Can you solve the problems creatively? Can you influence a team? Can you influence your parents? Can you influence your partner? Can you influence your customers into choosing you, your product, your organization? You know, building up leadership skills is going to be ever more important as we all have the ability to start organizations and follow our ideas through. Do you have the self-motivation, the inherent motivation to continue? And if you don't, identify where inherent motivation can come for you, and then just be resilient enough to absorb it all and to keep going. Entrepreneurship in general is much more than this, of course. Domain knowledge is important. Having the right supply chains, you know, making sure your costs are below your revenue, all those things. But I think one thing about entrepreneurship, which has made it consistently exciting, is the fact that entrepreneurs in general are, at their core, below everything, they are inherently optimistic. And I think that's really, really important, that we understand that they are optimistic because they want things to be better. And they see a way for things to be better than they currently are. And that always gives me hope. It's always a pleasure to work with entrepreneurs. And I would suggest to everyone, whether you start, a tech company, or you start an NGO or a social enterprise or a small baking business, kudos to you for your optimism and having that idea that things can be better. So I will end my presentation for now. I'm so happy to take any questions that are out there. Thanks for giving me the time.
Thank you, Ronita ma'am. That was a very insightful talk. In my opinion, all the elements that you mentioned was nothing new, but it gave us a new perspective and a new meaning on how effectively it can be infused in businesses to gain more. The stress given upon how a business should not only focus on its product, but has to see the larger picture to develop it into a good one and be a successful one is incredible. In fact, we will try to become the camels and not the Silicon Valley example. So, and it's actually fantastic that camel is a very resilient animal and we don't actually compare it. Yes, all these ideas are implementable, but somewhere we go wrong. Maybe that is the reason why there is this importance given to asking the right question. With that said, it brings me to my first question. So researchers say that women are good negotiators and are collaborative in nature. Is there a possibility that after COVID-19, we will have women in senior positions or being entrepreneurs more? Will we be able to shatter the glass ceiling?
Big question, and I love this question. Thank you for asking it. Okay, I'll take your second question first. Will there be more women entrepreneurs? I would think yes. And I say so because there is a tremendous amount of, as we know, volatility. There's going to be a lot of change, and there's going to be a lot of space unintentionally, unintentionally. And what I mean by that is that, unfortunately, I think a lot of people may not have jobs that they previously had. They're not able to continue in certain paths that they were on previously. And in that space that is created, I think a lot of women who maybe didn't realize the tools out there will start to realize that they can also take part in this, entrepreneurship boom that's going on. I think women too are very problem solving in nature. So they'll see this, that, why, and I've seen this it's anecdotally right now, but I've seen that with, even here in Delhi, I've seen a lot of fantastic moms, who have just been cooking at home, been cooking very fantastic food for that matter, all of a sudden start, little kitchens through Instagram where, they're delivering food at home to people that aren't able to go to the store, etc. And so, we kind of forget about this crowd where, if you have a small business, you're an entrepreneur as well. Don't think that entrepreneurs are just people sitting in Silicon Valley or Bangalore. So I think, number one, these women should get more credit. And I do think more women will become entrepreneurs because they're going to be able to have some space now to create new. Shattering the glass. Now, will there be more women leading companies? That's going to be a tricky one, to be honest. I don't know if this is like the most politically correct answer to give, but I do think, unfortunately, in times of volatility and when there's a lot of fear going on and uncertainty about the future, very few people are willing to make dramatic changes into something new. So right now we have probably less women in executive positions right now. Will those companies then make a dramatic change to have more women on the board or more women leading companies? Just out of fear and of the unknown for the next 1 or 2 years, to be honest, I don't see it. I don't see there being more women executives. I wish it was not so. And I'm very happy to be proven wrong on this, but I don't see it, despite how well our women leaders of countries are doing. But that being said, I think access to online education, lower barriers of entry to starting a business are all going to help women from the ground up start more businesses.
Yes. Even I hope and pray that we have more women. Like being a woman, I would like to see that more. And it is also fantastic that in the COVID-19 scenario, there have been a lot of countries like Germany and Finland. All the health ministers were women. And even if you take the case of Kerala, it is also a woman was the one who was leading it. So maybe it starts from the government side also. If you see changes somewhere there, maybe it can be replicated to our society as well.
Yeah, and Aishwarya, you might be the change you're looking for. It might be you. So don't wait for anyone else. Don't wait for anyone to lead the way. You're already there, and keep going with this. I think you're going to be the future leader I can refer to.
Thank you so much. Like, let that be true. I wish. We have got one question from Shubhamoy sir. So the question is, in our country, where a stable job is looked upon as the thing, how do you see the entrepreneurship and innovation scene 5 years from now?
Ooh, fantastic question.
Yes.
I think it's going to be very different at different levels for sure. I think across the board, no matter your socioeconomic level in India, where this idea of stable job is at a very heightened level. Entrepreneurship is, in its definition, considered someone or, taking on risk, right, for a higher reward. Now, if you're searching for a stable job, taking on more risk never sounds appealing, right? That being said, we are, as people, we're deeply influenced by the people we surround ourselves with. And I think there's a lot of people moving, young men, young women moving into entrepreneurship. And as they do so, there is a community effect on that. And I don't mean ethnic community or anything like that. It's just like who you surround yourself with. And I think the idea of having other people who are entrepreneurs is going to make it much more likely that you're an entrepreneur yourself. And I think that is the most effective. If we're talking, really on the ground, serious across all socioeconomic levels. Of course, we see in the news about, billion-dollar startups and, this person making this much money and this person making that much money. And of course, that can be a driver for sure. But as people, we're much more inherently driven by the people we see around us. And often our professions, what we do is driven by that. So I think that a stable job is, of course, still going to be heralded. That's not going to go away anytime soon. But I do see that as more people see friends, family, network, friends of friends going and starting their own ventures and ideas, we'll see that there's a larger effect of that. And I think as long as more people who are entrepreneurs, and this is something that's very important to me, that those who are entrepreneurs tell an accurate story and a realistic story of what happens, how it happens, that it's not all just excitement, that there are some difficult times with it. And I think as long as they continue to tell their stories out to their friends, friends of friends, communities, families, whoever, I think we will see more people moving into this space and willing to take a little bit more risk because my friend took that risk too, or my cousin took that too, or, I'll start a company with my brothers or whatever it might be. So I do see 5 years from now, a lot more engagement in entrepreneurship. Another pillar of this, I think, that I've seen on the ground myself is Intrapreneurship within family businesses. That is, I think 5 years from now, that's going to be incredibly large. We have, of course, startups are happening, but we haven't seen enough activity at MSME level as far as innovation goes and the role of technology in formalizing supply chains, especially when you look at natural resource companies here in India, and a lot of them are family businesses. So I think as long as we start having more young people look at ways to innovate within their family businesses. And as an entrepreneur, I've seen that myself with a number of my students who through COVID are now helping their fathers or their families' businesses, you know, have digital platforms for the first time ever, right? So digital platform for buyers and sellers, or an online website where all the merchandise is listed and they can buy directly site. We're seeing a lot of that. I think that's just going to continue. Long job isn't going to go anywhere. I think that might take another generation or two before that leaves.
Okay, ma'am. Our next question is from Anuj Kapoor, sir. He's faculty in JGBS. His question is the biggest challenge startups are facing during the time of COVID.
All the startups are different. I can go by sector. Online education's doing all right. I will say that. So ed tech is, if we know anything, is actually able to double down and actually has a lot more converts. I think maybe the challenge that they're facing is content creation. If we look at luxury goods, that's incredibly, that's one that's going to be very, very difficult to say, to provide a solution for, to be honest. Luxury goods, I mean, people have stopped going out and, you know, being in the environments where luxury goods are valued. And so, you know, those brands, especially those that have come up, are struggling, especially because that's not a market that people see coming back anytime soon. Some of the companies have tried to, you know, at least in the first month, cover all expenses. But now that it's been almost, you know, 2.5 months, I know a lot of them are struggling in regards to cash flow and are going to have to start laying off people. What else? I think that, I mean, what I've seen is that a lot of companies are on hold, and their cash flow, again, is a issue across the board. But some people have adapted. Delivery has been an issue, of course, especially if you're looking at consumer goods, how to do that. But some have taken the time to rejig what they're doing and to innovate, I'd say, and to adapt. Those that have taken a step back and been able to do so and have the fortune, are fortunate enough to do so, I think they've understood that they've needed to adapt and have taken this as a way to, taken this as a pause to redo their business model, reset up for what's coming in the future. Of course, you know, the then case is that everything's going digital, everything's going online, and there's no going back from this. Unwinding from this is going to be really difficult. This is our future, and, you know, maybe hopefully when we can all go outside a bit more, it'll be a little bit more blended with the physical world. But I think what has been good for startups and companies is that this has pushed people to embrace online content, digital tools, digital meetings. I'm sure a lot of companies have found that, wait a minute, you know, meetings we had to do in person can actually just be done online. Other tools, so digital tools like Slack, has been actually able to capitalize on this, on the fact that there's more online meetings going on, and have been able to provide new products, and we know what's going on with Zoom ourselves. So again, this time for digital needs, digital tools, they've been able to ride it out, I think, having already been prepared. But yeah, of course, consumer goods I worry about.
Even I agree that online platforms have been flourishing. We are the example of that. Zoom, yeah, take anything, everything is like flourishing.
Yeah, you know, I'll give you an example. I work with a fintech company as a client, And the work with them, it's been over a year now, it has always been remote. They're in Estonia, never met them. It's always been remote. Have a quarterly meeting, get on board, and then every single week we work, using Google tools and, Zoom when we have our quarterly meeting. And to be honest, COVID happened, and this is just a personal anecdote of mine. COVID happened and nothing changed. Not a single thing. If anything, we actually got a little bit more work because our business was already operating that way, operating in a form that wasn't physically attached to a location. And I mean, that's just a personal anecdote of mine where it's an example that COVID didn't change anything. And there are, maybe not everyone's talking about it right now because it's a difficult point to make, but sometimes there are these businesses where maybe things didn't change as much because they were already physically disconnected and just virtually connected.
Yes, ma'am. So this brings me to my last question, and this question is going to be asked by Chitrakalpa Sen sir, and the question is very big, so Chitrakalpa sir will be asking you the question direct.
Okay.
Over to you, sir.
Hello, Professor. First, it's not big, but it's a kind of, little convoluted. So it is actually a continuation of the first question that Aishwarya asked you. It's about, she asked you about the women in workplace, women in leadership positions. My question is a little different. My question is about, what you mentioned. It's really, kind of struck me that leadership is traditionally seen as a very masculine thing, right? So what you said, serious looking people, serious looking stuff. But we have seen what this kind of testosterone-driven, masculine way of leadership, what they can. In 2008-2009 crisis, the way of doing business in Wall Street brought the whole country, the whole world to its knees. In the last, I'm an economist. I work I teach a course in economic crisis. I teach my students, and in the last 50 years, we have multiple times, this way of, I'd say that. Not responsible way of doing business, testosterone driven, greed driven of doing business has brought us many times to a point which some people call the Wile E. Coyote moment, where we realize that the ground beneath our feet is just not there. We are hanging in thin air before just falling down. So do you think the next generation of entrepreneurs, you work with the next generation of entrepreneurs, so do you think that the next generation, the kids we are teaching right now, do they have it in them to change that, to be more responsible entrepreneurs, than compared to their predecessors?
I will say unilaterally, yes, but to what degree is a bit of a question. I think that, and I'm saying the unilateral yes, because there is larger awareness that wasn't there 20 years ago, that wasn't there 30 years ago. Understanding the environment, caring for the environment seemed very, fringe, hippie, not the way to do business, not the way to be a leader. But now I think there is incredibly heightened awareness in the fact of the challenges that we are facing, and that there is a responsibility towards that. And I think awareness is number one to even get to a spot of responsible leadership, for sure. So that's why I'm saying a baseline yes to that. Our young leaders, our young entrepreneurs, those I know personally, those I don't, everyone is aware of the challenges and is aware that, just going after profit doesn't work. Just going after, having the largest company in the world doesn't mean that you have the greatest products, or doesn't mean that you solve a problem, or doesn't mean that you're not doing this while infringing on human rights and workers' rights, etc. Now, to what degree do they implement that into their companies and into their ideas and their organizations is the question at hand. And I think as educators, we need to do a better job to give them the tools to implement. So they're aware of the problem, but are we, you know, even myself, am I doing enough to give them the tools to be responsible leaders in the workplace, right? Or in their organization. And one way of doing that, of course, is that we can actually control and teach is in regards to inclusivity and the importance of diversity. And I think we're not only is that a nice thing to do, but I think we're also seeing that profits and company value it gets better when more people are involved, and when your customer is inclusive and not just for one group, but it's actually there for a lot more. And we've seen that better decision making overall improves when there's more of a diverse boardroom or executive management. Not to say that, you know, just having a woman lead a company just solves all the problems. I think we need to come to the reality that it's about the individual, not the gender. But we need to have diverse voices to make sure that everything from products that don't harm come out, products that are insensitive to communities doesn't happen, that that there is someone in the room that says, hey, that might be a bad idea, or that, hey, we should take into account the ecological damage. So diversity, not just in look and color and all of that, but diversity in thought is going to be important. I think that's something that we need to instill a bit better with our young leaders, that it's okay to have someone say no to you or tell you it's a bad idea. But I do believe, I'm much more hopeful on, you know, people who are, you know, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. I think they're looking at leadership much differently than, you know, I was in 2007 in New York, you know, that was so masculine, that was hyper competitive, win at all costs. Now there is a lot more understanding that, you know, there is a cost to all that winning, and it is damage. And there's better ways to do it. And those benefits are something that consumers, or, you know, whoever your customer base is defined loosely, values as well. So as long as it's a combination that we as consumers and customers, whoever, demand and hold our young leaders to that level of responsibility. It's those leaders understanding the problems at hand and wanting to find a solution, but also as people who are older than them, who can give like a tiny bit of advice here and there. I think we have a responsibility to also equip them with the tools and the advice that they need.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I thank Ronita ma'am for taking time out from her busy schedule. It was a very interactive and informative session. We are very fortunate to listen from an expert like you. And thank you once again, ma'am, for being with us. It is always a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you so much, Aishwarya. You did a fantastic job. It was good to see you. Yeah, and if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to me by email. I'd be happy to chat. And thank you, Chitrakalpa, for hosting this, for Anirban, for putting this together. Thank you.
So for everyone who is there on the call right now, this webinar will be uploaded on YouTube. For anyone who have missed the session, so please tell your students, friends, family, whoever is interested in the topic. The session will also be available on our center's webpage. All the previous lectures are also available, so please do watch and let us know your views. Next week, that is on the 4th of June, Professor Lekna Jayasinghe, our renowned professor from marketing area, will be delivering the lecture. The topic covered will be the consumer behavior post-COVID, 5 ways to which we will use products, services, and brands. Until then, take care, stay safe, bye. Bye.
Bye.